Welcome to the NBA Coast to Coast podcast brought to you by thelines.com. Coming to you from the West Coast, Josh Lander, joined by my guy Nate Weitzer on the East Coast. And we have a 6-game slate here on Tuesday night in the NBA for you guys. In this one, we are taking a look at a pretty fun matchup here in the West. Memphis is in Denver, taking on the Nuggies with a few players questionable, so got to make sure you check that out and stay on that. Also want you to head to thelines.com. That's where we have all of our great written content, and as well as our odds finder tool. You can use that to make sure you're getting the best juice back on all these bets you make in the NBA this season. Get the best odds available there. Nate, let's go ahead and jump into this 6-game slate and then talk about this fun game out west, Denver and Memphis.
Only 5 games, I do believe. You had it right the first time. Jazz -3 at Detroit. We got the other game we break down. Warriors right now are +4.5 at the Knicks. The Bulls are +6 at Miami. +5 maybe, depending where you get it. Wizards +8 at the Suns. We're on a back-to-back. And then this game, which opened Memphis +3, it's now Memphis -1. Because Josh mentioned there are some guys questionable for Denver. KCP, Jamal Murray, Michael Porter Jr. is out. Jeff Green is questionable. Jokic is listed day-to-day, but he's pretty much probable with a little bump knee coming off a monster line. Again, Charlotte, the total's at 233 here, and I understand why it's high, of course. Memphis, only 2 games removed from dropping 142 points on the Bucks, the previous one of the best defenses in the league. And Denver playing with ridiculous offensive efficiency, especially at home in their last 6. They have a 124 offensive rating, scoring 123 per game. But they've really been living in the paint in those games. They're shooting just 28% from 3. They're scoring the highest percentage of their points off free throws in their last 3 overall. And they have 71 paint points in those last 3. And this is not going to work against Memphis with both Steven Adams and Triple J out there patrolling. Since getting Triple J back, the Memphis defense is so much better. Their rating's gone down 5 points per 100 possessions. Right now, they're allowing the 6th fewest paint points overall on the road and the 2nd fewest overall in their last 3. And they've had their struggles on the road, like many a team in the NBA. But, I mean, they are, as road dogs, so far winless. But so they have flipped, Josh, from road dogs to road favorites, technically. So I'll just tell you, as favorites, they're 18-5 with a 9 average margin of victory of 9 points per game. And they've been off since Saturday, and they're 5-1 with at least 2 days off, covering by 13 points per game when they get that little extra rest. Ja got a little extra rest because after 16 minutes, he got ejected for some sort of, grandstanding on the officials while talking to a fan at OKC. And then Memphis goes on to lose without Ja. This is their 3rd loss. The 3rd loss in their last 6 road games where Ja just was nowhere to be found. I mean, the previous 2 because of injury. So there's some weird stuff here to explain their home road splits. They also had a loss in Minnesota where they somehow had 24 turnovers to 17 assists, but they got 20 offensive rebounds as well. I mean, it's just very odd. The fact that they're 17th in offensive efficiency on the road. They have the 6th worst assist to turnover ratio. So, I mean, I'm looking at Memphis sputtering offensively, at Denver not being able to just knife through the paint the way they have against some of these softer teams. And I actually like under at 233, pretty high total. There's a chance it even gets up a couple more points just because of the reputation. I mean, you have Jokic, who's posting the most absurd individual offensive rating. You have Ja, who seemingly can't be stopped and has monster numbers his last 3 in Denver, 34 points per game, shooting 56%. But we've seen Memphis in some of these road games when Ja does play, he can put up 36, but there's no assists happening. There's no Desmond Bane. There's no co-star for him. I don't see this turning into a crazy shootout, to be honest. I mean, Memphis, you can say what you will about their offense in this span here where they had won 7 straight and 9 of 10. They also have a 103 defensive rating in that span. And they've had a couple low-scoring wins. over Denver recently. Those were back in Memphis, granted. But I just think in this situation that there's enough to limit here, and Denver is actually 8-4 to the under despite their efficiency. I don't know how much of that efficiency is the fact that they've been playing the Hornets, Wizards, and Rockets in those home games recently.
Well, it's not even just recently, to be honest with you, dude. It's all season. The Nuggets have the easiest strength of schedule played right now by a pretty decent margin when you look at like sort of the average opponent rank, who they're playing based on their opponent's wins. They're not playing teams with a lot of wins, that's for sure. So yeah, I would say that for what you've seen from them, things have been kind of soft, and you said it. And I did, we don't do a show on the weekends, but as soon as it's sort of a nice little rule when you see a really solid center in the NBA who's a good on offense playing against the Charlotte Hornets, go ahead and bet them, which is the good idea for Jokic against the Hornets the other day. But more importantly, like that's just a really solid example of who they've been playing and why they've been winning at home so well. And same for the Grizzlies in terms of explaining why they've been maybe potentially losing some of these games on the road. It seems a little bit weird as well. And some of their opponents have been some of the better teams. I mean, they lost, losing to the Thunder the other day was, like you said, Ja, basically, he just said after he got a first technical for yelling at the ref directly, then later in the game, he and a fan were just like messing with each other. And the fan was like, get it going. And he goes, I would get it going if these refs would give me a call. And then he got ejected for that. So that was also pretty soft. And that ruined what could have been a really fun matchup with SGA. But at any rate, now that they're coming back to this game in Denver and they've got another 2 on the road, I don't see this as a trap game. I mean, the Suns game coming up next, the Suns are putting teams in a chokehold right now and destroying them since Book came back. And then the Dubs, which you always look forward to that game, obviously, a team that knocked them out of the playoffs. But more importantly for this one, I don't see it as a trap game of any kind. This is just a very big moment for them, and they just lost to the Thunder, which was the team that they probably wanted to make sure that they win against on the road. So if anything, they're for sure going to be bringing it. We've seen the Nuggets lay down and roll over a couple times this season. In games where they came out and had double-digit deficits in the first quarter and then turned that into about 20-point deficits in the second quarter, and then just kind of roll over in that sense. And this is a game that I could see a little bit more for them as the one that's like, all right, they haven't played that well against the Grizzlies in the past. If you're looking at what's happened, in sort of the most recent history, at least at home, I know they won the last one there, but then the Grizz were able to take the previous 3 from them, dating back to last season, and that is because of what you were saying here, where both these teams live in the paint, but one of them is top 3 in defending the paint, and that's Memphis and Denver. If you want to see how good they are, you have to go all the way down pretty far for them in terms of their paint defense, like allowing the 10th most points there from inside the paint. So because of what we know about what Memphis is going to do, get up and down the court, Denver's not really limiting opponents in terms of their fast break points either, failing to get back, giving up at the 7th most points there. So it's a couple of those things that second chance points and points in the paint, and then fast break points. And if you're not able to stop those things against Memphis, as we saw Steven Adams continue to play really well alongside Triple J, as Triple J, has made a huge impact on their defense, and that's in part because Steven Adams is doing his thing to clear out the paint, which we know, and then Triple J comes in and is able to swat shots from afar and things of that nature. So I like that matchup and ability for them to put the clamps on Jokic as much as one's able to do that with a combined effort there, and then for them to be able to get theirs in the paint and all the places that they like to, since Denver's defense is still pretty questionable.
Yeah, Denver, you mentioned it. The paint points, the fast break points, that's a real issue when you're facing Memphis. They are, however, really good denying second chance points, which again makes me kind of circle back to an under that, Memphis, while they might be able to score with some efficiency, I mean, they're not going to get many second chance opportunities. And then on the other end, Denver's actually been a surprising fast break team. Recently 23 fast break points per game. They have 20 per game at home. Memphis in their last 3 is the second best transition defense in the league. And they will be motivated for sure after that loss at OKC. I mean, they're motivated on a nightly basis. They were just money against the spread last season, and we haven't really been able to follow them. It's kind of every time they hit the road, they're another team that just suddenly can't give a consistent effort. But I think we will start to see that from them. I mean, the public is all over this right now. It's up to -1.5 as we speak. Recording this on Monday night. By the time where this show's out on Tuesday afternoon, maybe Memphis is the 3-point favorite, and Denver's trailing at home. But I do like the idea of an under, and maybe Memphis winning with the under, despite the fact that they tend to do better in high scoring games. But I think the 235 or lower is definitely good for me.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely want it to keep climbing a bit if you can get it for that under. Definitely a bit ballsy, just in the excellent offense that you see from both teams. But like we keep saying, if Memphis is going to be able to guard the paint the rate that they are, that's where everything stems from. And shout out Bruce Brown, definitely has to be the direct reason there for those fast break points being where they're at for this team. Him getting out in transition, him getting rebounds and out in transition versus Jokic getting rebounds and out in transition, big difference. So when he's able to do that and lead things with Aaron Gordon and even KCP getting out there with them, obviously Jamal Murray getting back into shape, I do like that transition offense. But the fact that, like we keep saying, Memphis has been able to also limit that and is getting back on defense to the tune of the 5th best in limiting opponent fast break points. So you got to like the idea of both teams wanting to keep the other from doing too much fast paced stuff and really keep their your efficient shots from down low be the way that these teams keep scoring if possible. So,
and the Knicks are also red hot, as you mentioned here, 7 straight wins. 3 at home during the streak with an incredible 91 defensive rating, allowing nothing in the paint in that span and struggling to score. But I know you might think that indicates under. I am not taking an under with this Golden State Warriors team, and definitely not on the road. I mean, their defense is absolutely abysmal. And the way they're going to play without Steph Curry is a lot more pace, actually. It's going to be a lot more Jordan Poole, live and die by the pool, and see if they can get something going with the game more up tempo. And they were able to get a lot of free throws in 2 of their last 3 games. That did eventually lead to a win in Toronto. We were a little too reluctant to just bet, to fade them right away against Indy or Philadelphia with Steph out. But turns out they were fadeable because turns out the fact that when you have a negative 125 plus minus when your best player is off the floor, there's something to that. And when you're struggling, can't buy a win with Steph Curry, with him playing at the highest level of his career on the road, you can buy a win. I don't think that's really going to change just because, you see this phenomenon all the time in the NBA that when the star goes out, the rest of the team shares the ball better and they play better. But Steph Curry's kind of the antithesis of that, kind of like Kyrie Irving's out, so everyone's going to see more touches and play better and rally better because he's a joy to play with and he keeps the ball moving and he opens the spacing. And Andrew Wiggins being out is also a huge negative for the Warriors defense as well. Especially the way RJ Barrett and Julius Randle have come along now. The Knicks have proven very capable of playing in shootouts and low-scoring games recently. They've kind of been a magnet for overtime games as well, which has helped have some of those overs. I come back to this is now Jordan Poole's team, and the Warriors are going to continue to hoist threes at an extremely high rate. They're playing in Madison Square Garden, where visiting players tend to bring their shot. But their defense is just so bad that I very much would take the Knicks at -4.5. And I think I would lean towards this game going over as well, because I think the Knicks are going to score maybe 120. So maybe you just want their team total.
I kind of want all that, and it's so funny because as I was going through all of this, that everything that you just sort of went through has been my thought process as well, and I took the same roundabout way to get there. The first thought is, I don't know, it started at 224, by the way, it's down to 222.5 at least on DraftKings. You can get an over on that, basically I started looking for ways that this might go under, and then immediately was just like, I got nothing for you. I mean, I know how good the Knicks defense has been of late. I'm so happy to say that Evan Fournier has not seen the floor in the last 7 games that they've won. Derrick Rose has played like 5 minutes a game in those 7 that they've won, and no true malice meant towards those guys. But if you're gonna have guys that aren't playing great defense in your veterans, such as Derrick Rose and Evan Fournier, then why not just go ahead and get those guys like Quentin Grimes and Emmanuel Quickley and even some Miles McBride? Like, why not just get those guys in if they're all playing defense as poorly as? But then guess what? He put those guys in, and their defensive rating drops and is as good as you've been talking about that it is right now, which is obviously best in the league over the course of the last 7. You look at their games at home as well, all going under, but I mean their defensive rating playing at 91.5. That pace is still at 98.5, and so I know that they're guarding the 3 incredibly well, to the tune of 27.6% that they're allowing from deep over the course of this 7-game win streak. Definitely number 1. Only 9.1 threes made during that streak as well. They've played a few teams in there that are definitely 3-point shooting, fast-paced teams. Obviously, the Pacers is sort of a good measuring stick because these Steph-less Warriors just played those Pacers, and that game went clear over. 244 was the final total there, and obviously that barrage of threes on both sides, a lack of defense, and just pace at 108.5 pace. Then the Knicks come to town and play that exact same Pacers team with all the same players in, and they keep that pace all the way down to what they've been at, at roughly like 98 or 98.5, limiting the team, them to 13 for 38 from 3. Pacers team that is shooting a ton of threes and scoring, the 4th highest percentage of points from deep. So like, it's not like the Knicks could not insert their will if they wanted to. The problem and the reason that I then just flip to the under is as soon as you start looking at all the Warriors' defensive stats, because it doesn't matter if they were playing like Eastern Los Angeles Community College, they would probably be giving up, 120 defensive rating and allowing 120 points per game, because that's what they do to whomever they're playing against right now. And it's pretty disappointing. Steph hasn't been the problem for them on the road. It's been their defense and lack thereof. Teams not really going to the paint against them, which is interesting because they're still just giving up 40% versus 3. So they're not allowing nearly as many paint points as you might think for a team that is definitely struggling in that area without a true center outside of Kavan, who's doing his best, but he's still 6'9", unathletic center. And then Draymond is, the shell of himself that we've seen even in these last 4 without Steph. And that 4th game was the one against the Bucks. But I think the Knicks there's opportunity for them to just keep shooting from deep. RJ and Jalen and Julius Randle are just going to continue to eat. There's no reason to think that they're not. Every way that they score second chance points for Randle, who's been getting 11.5 rebounds a game over the course of this 7-game win streak. RJ Barrett shooting 36% from deep. Jalen shooting 50% from deep. Quentin Grimes shooting 45% from deep. So if you're going to allow teams to shoot 40% on the road from beyond the arc, which is what they've been doing, look at the team that they beat. It was the Raptors, and guess who can't make threes to the tune of the worst 3-point shooting team essentially and the fewest made in the league, Toronto, which is there continues to be their downfall, even if guys like Pascal are scoring 39 against the 76ers like he did on Monday night. But main point being, like, what these teams do, what New York does well on offense is going to be a feast for them in this one, at that reason alone, feel great about taking that, the over on their team total. And then for the game, it's at 222. That's still pretty low. If you expect that many points, I think you expect the Dubs to get at least 110 to 115 in this one.
Yeah, 108.5 pace they played at Indiana. That is absurd. And to then give up that many open looks when you're doing that. Look, I mean, if you expect the Warriors to come with a good defensive showing, it has to be Draymond Green. And you mentioned him as a shell of himself. Is also like kind of the yin missing his yang now. And as soon as Steph went out, his lines are just atrocious here. In that rest of that Milwaukee game, sure. In that Indiana game that was played at a brisk pace, he went for the old 1-2-3 line with 6 turnovers. And then he did come out and play well against Toronto after sitting a game. But Toronto, we've covered in multiple games, absolutely horrendous on defense without OG Anunoby as well. So, I mean, the fact that they were able to get right there and limit a really struggling team does not give me a lot of confidence that the Warriors are going to be able to cover this spread. I understand why people hit it at +6, but I think that's kind of foolish because this is really a feast or famine team. I don't think that they're the type of team to hang around and just lose by 4 or 5. They're either going to lose by like 16 or they're going to be in this game and maybe win it by 12 or something. Like it's just a question of whether Jordan Poole goes unconscious, basically. And for me, I'd rather bet against that when you have a full team from the Knicks, when you have a good defensive coach and Tibbs and a good scheme. And I'd rather bet against Draymond Green, suddenly finding his fire and leadership that's kind of been absent all season to get them to play defense on the road. So yeah, Knicks points and Knicks to cover.
Yeah, I don't want to talk about the punch, but you brought up the fact that he's not being as quite, maybe he's vocal, but it seems like it's a lot more geared towards the refs than it is to his teammates at this point. Maybe he doesn't have their respect quite as much, but either way, yeah, it's also just his ability, to just fly back and forth and play that Ed Reed style free safety in the NBA that he's always been known to play. Just it seems a little bit more slow-footed, to be honest, just a half a step slower. And he's getting foul calls instead of getting stops there and being in correct position. So he doesn't have any help either. With Wiggins out, it should be stated, their defensive rating jumps up from 112 to 117. That's not a surprise at all. One of the best defensive wings in the league. For whatever you want to say about how his offensive game looked before he got to the Warriors, he's always been a good defensive player, freak athlete, who when he's committed is incredible. So yeah, he's got one of the best individual defensive ratings, and as a result, this team suffers greatly on defense without him. He frees up guys to do a lot. So yeah, they're in trouble in this one, and even if they are able to sort of score a bunch of points, which I could see them doing for sure, you trust the Knicks to get the stops they need at the end. You never trust the Warriors to be able to get the stops they need right now, as they couldn't guard a nosebleed. So, Nate, let's go ahead and kick things off with your first play-up prop for tonight.
Yeah, the Utah Jazz are on a revenge tour, except it's other people getting their revenge on them. Donnie Mitchell, 23 points in 3 quarters last night, and now we get Bojan Bogdanovic in his first matchup with his former team. His prop is to get 23 points as well, and I like that a lot more than I liked Mitchell to get 29 because of just the fear we had that Utah wouldn't be competitive on the road. They're 0-6 in their last 6 roadies, 125 defensive rating, allowing 120 in their last 3 games overall. They're allowing a league-high 48% from deep. So I like Bogey, 23 points. I like him to hit 3 threes, which is near even money at FanDuel. I mean, he's been the man for Detroit, obviously, since Cade Cunningham was officially shut down for the season. In his last 4, 27.5 points per game on 31% usage. And he's just one of the most consistent lethal shooters, 45, 38, 97 splits, hitting 3.5 threes per game on 8.5 attempts. And Utah is just not defending the three-point line. They're not defending small forwards very well either, so I'm not scared of this matchup. I mean, he just had 27 against a Brooklyn team that's playing great defense, so I feel pretty good about him being able to get his and about him being sharp against his former team.
Yeah, and I don't think we need to quite worry about this thing getting out of hand the way the Donnie Mitchell game did, right? So we'll get some fourth quarter participation from Bojan in this one. Yeah, I've been picking Bojan pretty much like consistently, right? Like since Cade went down, I was like, look, like it says that he scores 22 a game when Cade is out. Why is his prop still at 18.5 or 19.5? 22.5 is probably where it should be. But this Jazz defense, once again, you probably get a little bit extra boost and juice on his totals and stats here. From the fact that they're awful on defense right now and they're giving up a ton of rebounds everywhere. So plenty of opportunity. Bojan's the adult on this team, and he's the man who's going to be with the ball in his hands in a moment where they really need a basket and to slow things down and get back in a game. So I'm going to go back to a guy we've been talking about a bit lately because he's been hot, and that's Julius Randle, playing really well for these Knicks on their 7-game win streak, now tied for the longest in the league with the Orlando Magic. Orlando lost to Atlanta last night, otherwise they would have tied. So Knicks have their solo spot of top win streak in the league. Randle, like I said, over those 7 games that they've won, 26.7 points a game, more than about 11.5 boards a game, and 4 assists during that time. So if you're doing the math there, that gets you way over the 38.5 PRA that he has Jazz tonight. He's pretty much been getting that with his rebounds and points. So go ahead and throw the assists in there and feel pretty good about that. As like I said, he's averaging 4 since they started winning all these games. In his last 4 versus in his last 2 versus Golden State at home in New York, 28 a game, 8.5 boards and 5 assists in there as well. The Dubs used to be a better rebounding team as well when Draymond Green was his old self, as we talk about in that game video. So I think you can expect a few more boards for Julius tonight. And then, in Golden State's last 4, they're allowing the 7th most offensive rebounds, the 8th most rebounds overall, allowing the 3rd most points per game to anybody. As we know, they're just not playing defense right now, allowing more than 120 points a game in their last 5. And Golden State on the season, they're allowing the 5th most points per game and rebounds per game. 2 power forwards. Probably a pretty big knock on the fact that the guy usually guarding those guys is Draymond Green, and if he's in there playing center, then maybe it's JaMychal Green. But either way, you feel pretty good about the position that Jay Randall is going to be in tonight to be able to score on this Dubs defense and fill up the stat line.
Yeah, but you're really harping on the rebounds, coming back to it, 11.5, and I think that's where you get the best odds here for Jay Randall. Even money from to get 10 boards or to get a double-double, which is basically the same thing. I think I prefer the points and rebounds to the assists, even though, Golden State's defensive efficiency is terrible on the road. He should pile up a few assists, but those are a little more of a fluctuation in terms of just, but his last 3, he's really been boarding up, especially against some fast-paced teams. And I'm going to stick with this Pistons and Jazz game, which has a total of 229.5. I would be going over that. We like Pistons overs these days. We mentioned how bad the Jazz have been defensively recently, and the Pistons have gone over in 3 of their last 4 with a 124 defensive rating in that span. So Utah's number 1 option is Jordan Clarkson, a guy who has the green light in any situation, who just put up 23 points despite the blowout last night in Cleveland. His last 6 on the road, 22 points per game on 29% usage. And he's getting good odds to go to 21 points here. His last 2 versus Detroit, getting 22 points per game again. And it's the efficiency that you look at, shooting 46% from deep, hitting 3.5 threes. Again, basically the same way I feel about Bojan. If you want to take a couple threes, because both these teams have just been so bad. Pistons allowed the Hawks to shoot 52% from 3 in their last game. And Atlanta, one of the worst 3-point shooting teams in the league this season. So, with the state of their roster, they're not going to be guarding shooting guards very well. They haven't all season. So, Clarkson and Bojan both preferred overs for me tonight.
Well, yeah, we're talking about points in that game. It seems pretty right on with a decently small slate too, and somewhat of a lack of options as we try to pick these player props with enough time ahead of these games to get this info out to you guys. So Jordan Clarkson and these 2 games are really sort of the best plays that we have for what we can kind of feel like we expect to be happening in this game. And that's a lot of points in that Detroit game. Probably points in that Golden State game as well. I think we like that for the Knicks and Golden State. But I am going to go with an under to finish things off from that game, as we've only got 2 games we're talking about here. But the Golden State Knicks game, back to that one, and Clay under in this one. He's at 22.5 points. Under in this one is actually minus 120 on DK for him to get less than 23 points. You could also look at the PRA, as he's doing most of his damage from trying to score, really not getting too much else in the peripheral stats there. But Clay, it's just a different season for him, and in the 3 that they've played since losing Steph, you could even throw 4 games in there. But the 14 points a game on 34% shooting for Clay is what stands out to you, even in a game where they blew out the Raptors. Still didn't really have a solid Clay performance there. An 87.9 individual offensive rating during that time. Only 3.7 boards and 2 assists as well. Not exactly known for diming, but you would maybe hope for a little bit more playmaking from Clay when Steph's not in. Faced New York twice since the injuries that he's had that we all know about as well. And in that time frame, 18.5 points a game, 5 boards, and 3.5 assists, all on a 25% usage rate. He's shot pretty well at times from decent from 3 as well at 37%, and 3.5 of those made against New York as well. But just not quite the same. You look at what New York's been doing in their last 7 games. We talked about it in the game video. 27.5% is what opponents are shooting from deep for them. They're also number 1 in limiting points in the paint. So there's really nowhere to score on them. They've got a 91 defensive rating in their last 7 for a reason. So they're allowing the 6. I do like their defense down low. I'd like it just as much, if not more, from the wing than at this point. Allowing the 6th fewest points per game to shooting guards, allowing the fewest assists per game to shooting guards. They're just D'ing up around the perimeter. And like I said in the game as well, that's definitely a direct correlation between not playing those older dudes anymore and allowing guys like RJ Barrett, Jalen Brunson, Emmanuel Quickley. All these guys have like a individual offensive rating or defensive rating lower than like 95 right now, which is insane because they're all just swarming all over the ball on the wing. So I really like what I'm seeing from them everywhere, and that just leads me to feel like there's a lot pointed towards Klay not being able to get his 23 tonight.
Yeah, 23 is too high for Klay Thompson. I mean, he's a guy who, as much as Draymond just feeds off the energy of Steph and feeds off the spacing to get his open looks. I mean, if he was back at the height of his powers, he could be a creator in the absence of Steph, but that's not him. That's Jordan Poole, has a 34% usage, scoring 31 a game since Steph went down. And Klay's going to try to play off that, but the spacing just isn't the same. And you're totally right about the Knicks wing defenders, because if they don't give 100% effort all the time, they're getting yanked. And that's what we saw, a couple weeks ago with RJ Barrett. And since then, they've all been given 100% at all times, because that's what Tom Thibodeau expects from them. So it's going to be hard for Klay to get it going against those guys.
Yeah, I agree. I know that it's scary to take an under in this game in any way, but there's somebody on Golden State that's not getting theirs tonight, and the fact that Jordan Poole has the ball in his hands and is shooting it 35% of the time means that, it's too scary to take an under on him, even at like 28.5 points, which I believe his prop has risen up to right now. I'm still feeling a little bit hesitant to go ahead and hit it under on that one, but Klay's seems like it's a little bit too high on the points there. So that is all the time we have for you guys in this one. Make sure to like and subscribe to that page. Continue to follow along. We are writing this ship for you guys tonight. So until we see you next, happy betting.